In today's deep dive, we dig into the groundbreaking negotiations taking place in the WNBA. But before we take the deep dive, our quick five. 1, it might be time for Addisu to become a sports bettor. 2, Michael Jordan, the commentator. 3, I talk about why I've completely changed my mind about a controversial MLB rule change. 4, top athletes dodge legal exposure and FTX's continued fallout. 5, is Pope Leo XIV the best thing to happen to Chicago sports in like forever? I'm Jason Kander, and I'm joined by Ravi Gupta and Addisu Demisi. Welcome back to The Game Within, where we talk about the business and politics of sports and how each shapes what happens on the field. Last week on the show, this is number 1, we talked about Denver's altitude advantage, and Addisu predicted the Nuggets would win Game 3, and they did. Philip, cue the video.
Oklahoma City's probably going to win the series, don't get me wrong, but I'd be shocked if they win Game 3 for this exact reason. Like, you actually could get some betting edges here.
A few moments later.
The Nuggets go up 2-1 in the series.
All right. Great cut, Philip. Addisu.
Take it away.
Yeah, go.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about the altitude advantage. It's not rocket science, honestly. And should I become a sports bettor? Well, my friends know I done been a sports bettor for quite a bit, but it's. I really would love to go back and look at just how many game 1s, if they had the home court advantage, game 3s. We talked last week about Broncos. Teams coming off of not being at altitude. It is, you can even see it right in the way they won that game, the Nuggets on Saturday, whatever day that was in overtime. Basically, OKC ran out of gas and they scored 2 points in the 5-minute overtime for a team that was the best team, certainly since the 2016 Warriors, in one of the best teams in NBA regular season history. To score 2 points in overtime with the MVP and a team that good suggests they ran out of gas. Not surprising why they ran out of gas. They were at a mile high after being at ground at sea level for the past 2 or 3 weeks. They turned out in Game 4, if people watched yesterday, they won, but it was one of the ugliest games in the league this year. They scored like 90 points. The Nuggets scored like 80 points because they were fucking exhausted after an overtime game in Game 3. So it's just something, as Ravi said last week, we're not paying close enough attention, I think, those of us who are casual watchers, to just how valuable that altitude home court advantage is.
Even like the non-casual, I keep listening to these NBA podcasts. This is an extreme comparison, but it would be like if they were playing underwater or with like ankle weights on and they just were commenting on the gameplay. I'm like, no, this is like a serious change. And I think we talked about this, like the fact that they would probably Oklahoma City would do worse in Game 3 than 4 because now they're acclimated, they're hanging out there. And it used to, like we're talking about, like after a couple of days at altitude, you feel a lot better. Oklahoma City certainly looked better at the end of the game yesterday than they did in Game 3. I just don't understand. Like, I get that this is a boring topic for sports shows to talk about, but it's just so glaringly obvious that this is a huge factor.
Well, even Game 4 was comparatively low scoring, 92-87. I mean, that's not, neither team breaking 100 is not super common in the NBA, but it's very uncommon for a Thunder win.
Yeah, well, Celtics scored like 87 points in the first half in the game that I went to the other day.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. And by the way, they barely scored 90. I mean, those last 4 or 5 points were like free throws at the end of the game anyway. Yeah. So that game was headed to what looked like a 2005 Pistons Spurs, game in the heyday of the NBA. But it was, it is hard, man. Like, shout out to those people who live in Denver when they come to sea level too. Like, it's like they're superheroes because, if you're truly acclimated to altitude, like, you can do magical things at sea level. So we'll see in Game 5. Like, my inclination now, it's 2-2 in the series. OKC has 2 of the next 3 games at home, which in theory they should win. But you got to think that they're going to feel extra good in Game 5, coming off of that long at altitude, finally adjusting, getting their heart rate, their heart and lung capacity up, and then coming back to sea level. Like, you could run for days. So that game 4 yesterday, honestly, the Nuggets almost won. They had a lead
so evenly matched.
It was, but they should have, if they had won that game, they would have won the series, in my opinion, because Game 6, they're probably going to win for the exact same reason they won Game 3.
Yeah.
Clip that one, Philip.
Well,
If they win Game 6.
Well, I had a chance to go to the Knicks Celtics game, which was billed as one of the most important games in New York sports recent memory, like especially in Knicks recent history. And it was so hyped. I'm on the way, our mutual friend Jamie, I'm on the way to the game with him, and tickets are like $1 bazillion. We were all the way up in the rafters. Tickets were selling close to the court for like $100,000 a ticket. And so where we were, I would say we were in the outer borough section. So a lot of people coming in from places like Staten Island where I grew up. And it was interesting for a number of reasons. Number one, because we'd come back from 20 down 2 times in a row, everybody felt like we were in it until like 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, even though we were down like 30 points. Like people kept saying in the audience, we just need to get it to within 20 by the fourth quarter was how people were talking, which we didn't get there. 2 was we were playing an interesting game where Jason, I imagine you are the closest to this, but like you might even get shouted out at sports games. But I was talking to Jamie, who's a very successful businessman, and it's like they do this thing like the ring of celebrities, essentially. Like basically every break they shout out celebrities, and it's fascinating to know how big the event is based on who makes the cut and who doesn't. And this was like Tom Cruise level celebrities, and then at the end they kind of dump out their like file and they're basically like, here's a bunch of other people. But the kind of people who get mentioned were like, you have to like have won an Oscar, right? And so we were debating what's our in. Like, if we were setting a life goal to be like, if we're going to get to the ring of celebrity at a game, like maybe
like put on the Jumbotron sort of thing.
Yeah. And I was thinking, okay, you start with the Brooklyn Nets because they do things like restaurateurs and local businessmen and stuff, especially if you go to like a regular game. Like, what's our in? And we were strategizing the whole time there.
What do you mean? What's your in?
Like, meaning what's our, what accomplishment would get us even in the vicinity of that? You know, Jason, I think you got the best path, which is if you're the mayor, which like,
I see
you flirted with this, you know what I'm saying?
Well, I've thrown out the first pitch a couple of times at Kaufman, and like I've done stuff like, I mean, look, for me, it would only happen in Kansas City. I'm not going anywhere else where people are going to be like, hey, it's, you know, maybe for like a brief period in 2018 that could have happened, probably. But now I'm like, I got to be in Kansas City.
Your boy Sudeikis gets shouted out at the
Jason is.
Yeah.
You got to be a huge Hollywood star or music star or sports star. Those are, I think, even politicians, like, you know.
Well, I mean, politicians, you don't even necessarily want to be on the Jumbotron because half the people are going to boo. I mean,
exactly. Unless you're George Bush after 9/11, it's basically a half and half proposition.
That's why when I have thrown out the first pitch, so I did it once as the Secretary of State, and then I've done it like as an executive at Veterans Community Project. And when I did it as Secretary of State, I specifically told the people writing the copy, don't just say secretary. You need to say Afghanistan veteran and Secretary of State, because that like inoculates you somewhat from the boos, which it did. And then the next time they were just like, you know, from Veterans Community Project, and everyone's like, yay, you know. So that helped. And then I've done it at a minor league game, and in that case, I did it where I had my son as the catcher, and that also inoculates you, and they name that your son is there, and that helps.
Well, we set an intention, which is like maybe never at the Garden during a big Knicks game, but maybe at Barclays. I want either me and probably more likely Jamie to be one of those people. I once had this goal to have my name on a Staten Island ferry, which is equally as preposterous. Although there's some randos who have their names on the ferries, and they're actually selling one of the ferries right now. Pete Davidson bought one and he can't get rid of it. So I'm just manifesting that.
Dream big.
Well, one other observation is it's actually way more pleasant to be getting your ass kicked than to lose a close game. Like I was like in a Zen state the whole time. Amen. We were joking the whole time that we had them right where we wanted them. The mood was actually just fine in the game. And because we're up 2-0 and felt like we had robbed both of those games, everybody was fine. So
I went to game 3, Warriors Timberwolves on Saturday night with my mom. Shout out to my mom. Happy Mother's Day. And who is also a Warriors fan, by the way, but talk about a present for her. That's actually for me. But yeah, we, you know, we had a lead going into, you know, that move. Yeah. But had a lead going into the fourth, and like, it was ripped away from us, and you could feel the not having Steph Curry and I was honestly pissed for like most of the rest of the weekend. So it's been a great playoffs though, man. I got to say the NBA, you know, we have some stats I think here to put up, but all the poo-pooing of actually I think we have a video, but all the poo-pooing of whatever in the woke era NBA and blah blah blah, like when the product is good on the court, and it has been way better than last year, that's for sure. Ratings are up, you know, and people are watching.
Let's see this video, Philip.
How is the rise of new stars helping the NBA playoffs and impacting the fan experience and viewership? We did officially get the round one ratings. There's a tremendous increase. So NBA playoff ratings for the first round are up 6%, averaging 3.7 million viewers across ABC, ESPN, and TNT. We saw the most watched opening weekend in 25 years. And that Rockets Warriors Game 7 was the most watched first round Game 7 on cable since 2009.
This is good because as we've talked about, the regular season ratings were not great, especially at the beginning of the season. So that's good for them. By the way, Addisu, you reminded me, I took my mom once to Hamilton, like at the height of Hamilton when it first came out, my mom, for her, either her birthday or something. And that was the move there.
It's really great. It's a great move. It's a great move. But no, basketball's, you're right. Like, regular season, we've talked about this on this podcast before. It's hard in an 81 game season, 82 game season, or 162 game baseball season to get excited about a game in January or July. But when the product gets good, and it has gotten good, and the stakes get higher, people watch. It's pretty much that simple. And yeah, if you haven't been watching the NBA playoffs, you've missed like 5 classics, you know, and pretty much every game has been interesting in some way, shape, or form. So that's, you know,
the NBA has also done a very good job of catching up on highlighting some of their players using non-game content. I mean, like everybody sort of pans that starting 5 series that was on, I think it was on Netflix, right?
Yeah.
I watched it. I could see why people panned it a little bit, but I enjoyed it. And like, you know, look, I knew a little bit about Jimmy Butler. I knew a little bit about Ant. I knew a little bit about Tatum. He's from Missouri, so I knew more about, you know, but like, I do feel like I got more emotionally invested in those guys. And as a, you know, I don't have an NBA team in my town. I'm a Thunder fan, but like, I don't, you know, so, but it does, I am one of, and this is, I think, pretty common across the NBA. I'm one of those people who, like, I have a lot of bandwidth to become interested in players that don't play for my team. And that content has served them well. Plus, a lot of players are getting really good at the social media piece too.
Really
well, this is a good segue into what we need more of in the NBA, which we've done multiple segments on, is we need candor. And one person we can count on for that is the best basketball player ever, Michael Jordan, who shockingly has signed a 11-year, $76 billion broadcasting deal. Or his isn't $76 million. He's signed like some mega deal to be a commentator on NBC. So this is part of like a big rollout for them.
There's a big $76 billion broadcasting deal between Disney and Amazon, and I guess he's part of the package that comes.
I see. Well, and you know, I'm trying to think about what is he going to sound like, and there are 2 ways this can go. There could be the Nick Saban route, where the person who is famously caustic and direct becomes grandpa, and he's just saying nice things about everybody. I'm going to zag on this one and say that Jordan's going to be Jordan, and we're going to get a lot of like Hall of Fame speech Jordan in this. And I sure hope so. Like that would be wonderful if he just shit talking people repeatedly. Like my prediction, he's going to be shit talking the best players mostly. I imagine he'll carve out special admiration for certain players.
I kind of hope he does. I mean, like, to your point, not shit talking. I think the inside guys, you know, sometimes take it too far, but they've earned the right to do that because their show is so entertaining, especially Barkley, but Shaq too. Kenny kind of stays away from it, but Shaq and Barkley have been famously hating on the new generation, but like earned. Oddly enough, Michael Jordan, despite being the greatest player of all time, I don't think he's going to have to earn that with the viewers, what Barkley and Shaq have, to be that kind of like jerk. But I think you might be right. He might not be able to help himself. And I think it might actually go over poorly. First of all, if you're 26 years old right now and an NBA fan, you do not remember Michael Jordan. You know, obviously who he is, you own his sneakers or whatever, but like, you don't actually remember him in any way, shape, or form. So he hasn't like earned the ability to be a dickhead like Charles Barkley has, even though they play of the same generation. And so it could really go bad for NBC, but like, God, I'm happy that this is happening.
He's so self-involved. And I mean this as a compliment. It doesn't sound like it. Like, he sees the game through his own experience. Like he's like the most present person of all time. Like, it'll be weird to have him talking about the game as like a historian of the game. He just doesn't feel like the kind of person who could occupy that space. But then again, he is the most competitive person ever. So he might be looking at Brady sucking, and he also might be looking at Charles Barkley and Shaq and being like, I'm going to dominate this and over prepare. Yeah.
I suspect that he's going to be outstanding at this. And the reason is because before LeBron James was, playing himself in, what was that movie, Trainwreck, and before he was doing his own Space Jam and being in tons of commercials, Jordan was doing this before anybody else. And we can how quickly we forget that dude is very good on camera, that he has a lot of personality, and that I think he's going to do really well. I have no idea what tact he'll take. I suspect that he will say whatever the F he wants because he's Michael Jordan. I don't know that he'll actually be, I suspect he'll be very complimentary of players because he has no reason whatsoever to feel even remotely insecure about anybody else's success. So I suspect I think he's going to be very aware that people are waiting for him to be arrogant and critical. And that as a result, I think he'll end up being much more generous. But I bet I'm going to make a prediction here. I think he's going to be the Tony Romo of NBA. Wow. because of the competitive aspect of him that you're talking about. I don't see Michael Jordan being like, yeah, I got a show coming up in a couple days. I mean, I guess I'll make some notes before the show and go on. I imagine Michael Jordan will be like, send me all the film. I want to know everything. I'll have notes because he's Michael Jordan. I don't think he does anything a little bit.
Yeah, I sure hope so. And like, you think about a basketball game, like quarter two, you don't really care. I want stories that have nothing to do with the game. Like, it just prompts you. Oh yeah, this one time I was in Cleveland in 1987. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want that kind of stuff in the middle of the game.
But the river card came and I was good.
But the thing is, they haven't actually said what he's going to do. Right. I think they called him like a special comment, which probably means they haven't quite figured it out yet. They were just like, please, Michael Jordan, come put your name on this. We'll figure out the details later. And thus people like us are talking about it today. He could be a game commentator. He could be a studio commentator. He could do special segments. Like, who the hell knows? Yeah. But I think he's going to have to find a voice. Like, even though he is the greatest player ever and he's good on camera, we saw it in, why am I blanking on the name of the documentary Last Dance from the pandemic? Yeah. He's got charisma oozing through his veins, but like, it's still a different skill set that he's going to have to master. And it wasn't foretold that Charles Barkley or Kenny Smith or Shaq, or to that end, Richard Jefferson, or any of these players who are now play-by-play or color guys, like, would be good. It's a different skill set. With that said, he is Michael Jordan, and he is. I'm certainly going to watch. I mean, I was going to watch anyway because shout out the NBA on NBC. Like, from my youth, it has never quite felt right. That the NBA lost. Yeah, like the NBA on NBC doesn't exist, but it will be compelling television just to see how he does. And that is, I guess, the whole point of this. So shout out to the execs at NBC for figuring it out.
Yeah. What's the music?
We got a clip. We got a clip for you, Ravi.
Oh, good.
Play it.
All right,
play
2, 3, 4. Basketball, gimme the ball because I'm gonna dunk it. Basketball, gimme the ball because I'm gonna dunk it.
That wasn't even planned. That was awesome.
Amazing.
I didn't even know we were playing that.
You like that?
Incredible.
I send that clip around to my buddies probably once a month during the NBA season. It's from SNL.
It brings me back to sitting around with my brother. We had the attic together, and I distinctly remember the game when Jordan came back against the Magic. I think was the game when he was out playing baseball in his first game back. It was against the Magic, I believe. And just that music, I'm just thinking about sitting on the floor. By the way, so for all of our people watching along right now, go subscribe to The Game Within wherever you get your podcasts. We are in Apple, Spotify, etc. Just go follow us there before we keep going.
Jason, it's your
All
turn,
right.
man. Talk about baseball, brother. Number
All
3.
right. Now, number 3, the new extra innings rule in Major League Baseball has fans loving the sport again. I would argue, but what's interesting about it is it's because of an old school reason. So if you're not familiar with this, a few years ago, Major League Baseball made the announcement that as soon as you get to extra innings, there would be what they call the ghost runner would be put on second, which just basically means whoever recorded the last out of the 9th inning, you start the inning with them on second. And the reason for this was baseball was tired of the fact that like you'd get to extra innings and some games were literally going 17, 18, 19 innings. And then it's problematic for a few reasons. One, TV has other stuff planned and they have to move on to the other programming so that they can sell ads for that programming. Not to mention the fact that like people were like, I can't invest in a game that long. The teams were like, this is getting to be ridiculous because we're running out of pitchers and we got a whole series to play. And you were getting more and more extra inning games that were ending where it was like a position player on the mound because they were out of pitchers. And it was coming down to like the third baseman pitching against the other team's catcher. And it was just not interesting. And so they said, okay, well, we're going to hurry things along. And as a result, very few major league like extra inning games have gone past the 12th or 13th since this happened. Okay. But what's interesting about this to me is that a lot of people, a lot of purists, and I would consider myself a purist in baseball, were like, this is ridiculous. It's not real baseball. I wasn't quite that obnoxious about it, but a lot of people were. And nobody's saying that anymore. And I think that's for an interesting reason, which is this has reintroduced into the game something that people thought they believed, they thought was boring, which is small ball. Because now what's happening is you start the inning and you're like, we have to
sacrifice fly immediately. Yeah,
you're going for sac fly. You're going for a sac bunt. You're trying to steal third. And then if you do get another guy on, you're immediately having him steal second because now you got a chance to get a second run, that insurance run. It's actually brought back the most exciting parts of baseball, which are not home runs. They're not always power pitchers. They're bunting for a hit, sacrifice bunting, moving guys over, and it's actually been awesome to watch.
What do you do? I think I agree with you, except, and this is how I feel about basketball, my favorite sport, and a bunch of other sports. The part that gets me always is how it affects the historical record about earned run averages and runs scored and all those things. And remind me, do runs scored in extra innings count as like a run on somebody's
it's a good question.
Ledger, as it were?
I'm not sure whether if you allow that run to score, I'm not sure if it counts as an earned run, because for those who don't follow these tiny little things about baseball, like if you are a relief pitcher and you come in with a runner on second, that's referred to as an inherited runner. So the pitcher who was taken out, if that run scores on your watch, that counts against their earned run average, not yours. But there is a whole separate inherited runner thing. So I assume it goes as an inherited runner and doesn't go as an earned run.
But I'm guessing it comes to a run scored for the player that actually crosses home plate if they cross home plate,
so.
etc.
Well,
and obviously,
if they steal third, they get the stolen base.
Yeah, and true, and the out. If you sacrifice bunt, it counts as an out for whoever happens to be the first player up, which will take down their batting average, etc. So, or although no, you're right, sacrifice doesn't count.
Yeah.
But anyway, my bigger point is it kind of messes with the historical record when a rule that fundamental is changed. Again, I don't particularly care, except people talk about this in the context, or I think about this in the context of like overtime in a basketball game. Like I kind of wish that basketball overtime was like done with the why am I calling it Elam ending, where it's just like 1st to 10 wins as opposed to 5 or whatever number, pick a number 8. Because it's way more exciting to play just like we do in the backyard, like play to 21 or whatever it might be. But a lot of arguments against it are against that and things like that are it's going to fundamentally change the record book. If you make the game 40 minutes instead of 48 minutes, it's going to change the record book, et cetera. With that said, I think you're right. Like, it's cool that baseball now has a different overtime essentially than the regular game.
Does this apply to the postseason?
Yeah, it's
wow.
it's been in place for a bit now, and there was a Royals game the other night where Kevin Biggio came up, and I can't remember if he was pinch hitting or if he had pinch hit earlier in the game. It was extra innings, and they needed to move the runner. He came up, they needed to move the runner over to third, and he squared to bunt. And sometimes if you square to bunt early, a pitcher will just throw at you, right? Because the pitcher's thinking like, okay, you're going to pull the bat back. The ball's going to hit you. You're going to get first base, but that runner's not heading to second, right? And I don't care about you if I'm only playing to prevent the one run, right? So it's kind of a hard, messed up thing about baseball is like if you square to bunt early enough for the pitcher to be able to see it, he'll just throw the baseball at you 100 miles an hour, right? Well, that's what happened. And Biggio, it's an awesome replay. People should look up. We can't play it for rights reasons, but Biggio ends up having to hold the bat up, and off the handle of his bat, the bat is what prevents the ball from hitting him square in the nose, and he like bunts it and flips backwards because he's trying to avoid getting hit, and moves the runner over, throws it. And so, like, my point is that is a bunt that is one of the top 10 most athletic and crazy things that happened in baseball in the last week, and it's a bunt. And that's like an incredible thing that the rule change created.
I hesitate to ask this question because it could be a rabbit hole, but what's your obligation to get out of the way when somebody is throwing it high and tight? Like, because like I always wondered, like,
you probably don't want to get hit.
Yeah. But like, let's say it's like game 7 of the World Series, right? Like, do you have to move at all, or could you just?
You are required to make some sort of effort to get out of the way. That said, when these guys are throwing that hard, nobody expects them to be able to. But like, if you just stand there and make absolutely no effort whatsoever, sometimes they'll just call it a ball. Now, if you move your body if it's a pitch outside the strike zone and you move your body into it to be hit, they'll call that a ball. Also, if you are hit by the pitch and you are either swinging or the part of your body that is hit is within the strike zone, it is a strike. And in a men's league baseball game 2 years ago, I struck out on a strike 3 where I definitely, on a soft curveball, leaned my arm into and got caught. And it's a hell of a thing to have a bruise from a strikeout
and a K on your scorecard. Yeah, that's right.
It is humiliating.
Well, I think in general, like these kind of rules, we've seen it in hockey. I think they still play 4-on-4 during in overtime in the regular season, and then they go to a shootout at the end. Obviously, you got penalty kicks in soccer. You got it's time to experiment. We've talked about this on this podcast in other contexts, like. Regular season sports are getting boring, period, except for basically NFL because there's only 17 games. And even NFL in the middle of the season can get a little sloggy.
Yeah.
But in these sports that have a lot of games, like try new shit, man. Like, why not? What's like the only thing you're messing with is tradition, and tradition isn't going to get you new viewers.
Well, it's another time we could talk about penalty kicks because I have a lot of thoughts on that. But let's go to story number 4, which is. You had FTX, which was this crypto company founded by Sam Bankman-Fried. They were, a lot of the leaders there were convicted or pled guilty to fraud of all types. Sam Bankman-Fried is currently spending time in a federal jail. I don't think he's in prison yet. I think he's down the street here in Brooklyn with Diddy at the Brooklyn lockup. But, barring a Trump pardon, he'll be spending some time in prison. Or maybe he was sentenced. He was. Never mind. He's sentenced. But for some reason, he's here. Maybe it's another trial. But there were many celebrities who endorsed FTX. Larry David, Steph Curry, Tom Brady. Here's a video of just, a commentator discussing just how widespread the big names were endorsing FTX.
So to kind of go through who does have relationships with FTX, Brady, we all know from all the ads, he actually has an equity stake too, so a little bit different than, say, a sponsorship. And that's what the Miami Heat have. That's actually owned by Miami-Dade County, and the arena is itself. And then you have F1 team is related. There's FTX patches on the umpires.
In that video, you also had Osaka, you had Otani, and then let's see. Let's look at this Brady video real quick from when he got involved.
What's up, guys? I'm here with my boy Sam from FTX. We're at Crypto Bahamas conference. We're going to start the day. We're going to do some TikToks for you guys, and it's going to be an amazing day. We'll get started. We'll do a get ready with me. Sam, where are you going?
Okay, that was just a strange video. First
Yep.
of all, I mean, Sam Bankman-Fried kind of
Just
moving strangely,
just hanging out in the Bahamas with Tom Brady, as you do.
Yeah. Well, Curry was paid $35 million to promote FTX. I'm sorry, Addisu, to bring that up. Brady was paid $55 million, but as one of those commentators said, had a stake. It keeps going.
Yeah.
But now they're off the hook. Go ahead, Rob.
Right? Are they?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's probably so many lawsuits here, but I'll just read from the coverage here. The judge found that the celebrities, some of whom appeared in commercials to promote the cryptocurrency, including Curry and Larry David, didn't intend to deceive customers, but described their actions as, quote, uninformed, negligent, and even reckless. The judge added that celebrities weren't responsible for investors' losses because they had no prior knowledge of FTX's fraud. That sounds right to me. It's like if everybody else didn't know that they were frauds at that point, including the people who had money within these, like why is there a special circumstance for celebrity?
It feels like a Hail Mary, right?
Yeah.
If they could have found out in discovery that Steph Curry or Tom Brady did have some kind of knowledge about this, like that would have opened up a pot of gold for them or any of these folks. But this feels to me like a pretty standard endorsement deal. Just happened to be, and FTX was clearly trying to use sports to legitimize their business and successfully did so until they got caught. So, this kind of endorsement deal happens all the time. It would have required, I'm not saying I really understand the specific legal parameters here, but I got to think it required intent here or required knowledge of some kind that they knew about the fraud that FTX was perpetuating on their customers. And they didn't, they just got money to promote it and do a stupid TikTok like Tom Brady did. And
they're framing it like a pump and dump, like crypto scheme, which is different. That's when you know that you're inflating the value of something and then you're timing your exit so that you make all the money from the upside while the investors.
So like the president did with his.
Yeah. And Hak Tua, two prominent figures, Trump and Hak Tua girl, she got in trouble for allegedly doing that. I don't know where it actually shaked out. And I'm not sure what she really knew about what she was doing. But that kind of stuff happens all the time. This was clearly, there's no evidence that this was a pump and dump.
No.
All right. Well, speaking of Hail Marys, Addisu, tell us about the
number 5 in the that was beautifully done, Jason. We're getting good at this, guys.
Philip prompted me, so
you may have heard that our new Pope Leo XIV is from Chicago, and after the world learned that the Pope is from Chicago, every Chicago sports team jumped on the opportunity. I think everybody knows by now that Robert Francis Prevost is now Pope Leo XIV, a Chicago native. The internet exploded. I think it actually, this was international news, obviously, but here domestically, even bigger news, our first American Pope. He graduated from Villanova University, chose the cloth over attending law school, went to Peru, clearly a man of great accomplishment, and now the pontiff. But Chicago area and Villanova fans have gone, let's just say, apeshit about this. And the Cubs, we should put up the photo here. The Chicago Cubs, famed Northsiders, claimed that the Pope was a fan, or at least this.
I got a community note. You got a community note. Look at that.
Yeah. Hey, Chicago. He's a Cubs fan. This is obviously in jest, but the Pope's brother shot the Cubs down and denied the claims. He's a Southsider, guys, and let's watch this video of Pope Leo's brother talking about his sports fandom.
Clear up the thing about the Cubs and White Sox.
Yeah, he was never, ever a Cubs fan, so I don't know where that came from. He was always a Sox fan.
Yeah,
But
man.
Also, shout out to that guy who's been everywhere since his brother was
Hey,
elected
man.
Pope.
If
Like,
my brother were elected the Pope, I'd probably just be dunking on people too.
It's funny he talks about his brother like his brother's dead. I guess when you're the Pope and your name changes, he was like he always was. It's like
He used to be Bobby,
guy?
but now
Could you just
Yeah,
ask
Bobby's
him? It's
dead.
like you talk about him like it couldn't be clarified. Like,
you're not allowed. Hey, you can't. I don't know if you're
What are
allowed
you
to
gonna
ask
do?
the
Call
Pope
the
his
Pope
sportsman.
and be like, I mean, he can, but like the rest of us can't be like, I'd like a comment from the Pope on which baseball.
by the way,
team is
why
this
go
good?"
with the Leo the 14th? Why not like they're not like wouldn't you want to be the first of something?
Oh, there's
Yeah.
look, man, there's NPR religion correspondence we can have on
Yeah,
the show to
this-
discuss
that
that. I'm
feels
not
like
qualified.
That is way outside of my my wheelhouse here, but it is worth showing this. I mean, it had to have been AI. I don't know how people found this, but
Yeah.
thank God we found this clip from Game 1 of the 2005 World Series, which the White Sox won over the Astros, if I remember correctly, with a clip of the Pope in the stands. Roll it.
They're 2 strikes away from a win here in 2005 in Game 1 with Jenks on the mound and Everett at the plate.
Looking
so
stressed as
wild
hell.
To me.
my God.
Unbelievable.
my God.
So he was, I mean, that's real stuff to go to the world wearing the jersey.
Uh-huh.
So now obviously the White Sox, shout out to them, have fully claimed the Pope as their own. Chicago sports figures like Caleb Williams as the quarterback of the Bears, claiming the Pope, and
I like how
even
he did it. He tweeted, "Duh, Pope."
duh Pope.
Pretty
Yeah, we
good.
should. Sorry for the listeners. Pretty good for Caleb Williams. And tonight, the NBA draft lottery, if you didn't know, is happening. Chicago Bulls are in it, and we should play this clip from ESPN about maybe the pontiff getting in NBA draft lottery prayers.
I called 100 people just to say we want, in Chicago, we're so obsessed. We want to know everything about the Pope. Is he going to bless the Bears? And I had one of
Forget the Bears. The Bulls on Monday in the lottery.
Bless Caleb.
Yeah.
Ooh.
The Bulls on Monday, Cooper Flag. That's where you're
I'll
first.
take that.
By the way, our friend Annie Agar.
Take that, Wendy.
We're gonna if the Bulls win the lottery tonight, by the way, it's over for Twitter.
I just love the energy on Get Up right now. It's like, it's like these like older men, and it's like they're just like. It's
Anyway,
It is the
it's like
DeBear sketch.
It's like the McLaughlin group, you know. Like
it is. Can I just say,
anyway,
like,
guys, yeah, go ahead, Jason.
Well-
It's a great story, honestly. It's so much fun.
Yeah, and honestly, like the sports stuff aside, I'm a Jew and everything, so maybe I'm the last person that would comment on this, but I went to Catholic school. And so to me, even the idea that the Pope is from Chicago is still like, there's a lot of things that have happened in the last, say, 10 years in the world where you're like, it takes a while and then you adjust, like Donald Trump being president, stuff. There's so many of those kind of things where you're just like, how is that reality? But to the point where I feel fully desensitized to stuff like that happening, to like, I mean, you name like this celebrity getting named to this ambassadorship or whatever, that kind of stuff, where I feel desensitized to it. But I've been walking around the house the last few days, occasionally saying to Diana, the Pope is from Chicago. And like to her,
went to Villanova,
right?
Like, which, by the way, like you talk about sports, right? New York, we're big Nova fans because of Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart. It's big, we have a lot of Nova on that team, the Nova Knicks, they call it, and Mikal Bridges, right? Didn't he go to Nova also?
Yes, half the team did it.
Yeah. So somebody we lost this past year.
Josh Hart, no, DiVincenzo, but Josh Hart.
DiVincenzo too, yeah.
Josh
So
Hart,
three,
Mikal Bridges, and Brunson. You have three, and last year you had four.
3 Nova. So he's probably blessing us too, the Knicks tonight.
It's just,
we'll see.
We have a Midwestern Pope. I just, that's so strange to me
cool.
and fascinating.
Cool.
And
it is. I mean, because there's never been an American Pope, it's always felt like something that's a little, usually Italian, German, whatever, European, certainly. This time, I think there may have been an Asian Pope, African Pope was under consideration, so it would have been, different or felt different, but like never would have imagined American. And then Chicago is like, South Side Chicago too. It's like so American it hurts. It's great.
Do you know what this reminds me of? Do you remember that movie King Ralph? The John
Oh, yeah.
Goodman, where it
John
turns out
Goodman, yeah.
they're
Wonder
like
how
trying
that
to
holds
find
up.
an heir to the throne, and then it turns out it's just this random
Dave.
American guy.
Or Dave.
Yeah, or Dave. It
Yeah.
reminds me of Dave. Like that is the vibe that I'm getting from this whole thing.
By the way,
idea that
Dave is an
Pope from
awesome
Chicago.
movie.
Fantastic
Awesome
movie.
movie.
One of my favorites. Well, he speaks fluent Latin, and clearly he's leaning into
He's
his
a real Pope.
Yeah, he's like leaning into his non-Americanness, let's just say. But we'll always have that clip of him stressed out when Bobby Jenks is throwing a fastball in the World Series in 05. It's going to be hard, honestly, to divorce that from like whatever he ends up doing in the world to save millions of people and inspire millions of people. Will be like, did you watch the Sox game today?
We have a Pope who has an opinion on the ghost runner on second. Like, I mean, that's wild, man. So anyway, all right.
Oh, good. All right.
Okay, for the deep dive, after a record-setting 2024 season, the WNBA is looking to renegotiate a collective bargaining agreement amid rapid expansion. So, some WNBA growth stats: the viewership last year, the WNBA secured a media rights deal valued at $2.2 billion over 11 years with Disney, which really ESPN, Amazon, and NBC. WNBA set an all-time record of viewership with 54 million across ABC, CBS, ESPN, ESPN2, ION, and NBA TV during the 2024 season. Viewership on these platforms alone jumped 170% from the 2023 season, and CBS viewership was up 86%. We could keep going, but basically, we are heading into this collective bargaining agreement negotiation at a time where the WNBA is people are watching, people are going to the games. Addisu, I think you're the one who has probably the most fully formed thoughts on what this is going to mean for the CBA.
I mean, first of all, it probably, I don't want to say probably, it feels like a work stoppage is ahead of us. I mean, this is a big deal. I'm funny. I'm going to the Valkyries, the Golden State new team, first game on Friday night.
First it's expansion, right?
Season game. Expansion. Yeah, this is their first season. There'll be another expansion team next year. I'm excited about it. I think the Valkyries had like the third biggest women's basketball crowd ever a couple days ago. Not here at Chase. I forget where they played, but anyway, the point is this is big business now. And honestly, let's keep it 100. Like this is mostly about Caitlin Clark. Like it, it's largely about the improvement in women's basketball, but like Caitlin Clark is the thing that has supercharged it, put it to you like that. And
I think Caitlin Clark allowed people to discover like, oh, this is awesome.
Yeah, it's been great for years, but like the Clark moment, not unlike the Magic and Larry moment of the early 80s. Yeah. It happens every sport. Superstars are what drive interest, and she is the biggest superstar in the sport, even though she's not the best player in the sport. Yet she might win the MVP this year. So all this is to say, this has become huge business. It is, this rights deal is a big deal, and the NBA, these players just do not make enough money to commensurate with the big business, and so they're fighting for a bigger piece of the pie. I'm always going to be a little bit labor friendly in this moment, and I think particularly for this reason because these players cannot sustain themselves as elite athletes on the salaries that they have. I think we have some of the stats here. I'm trying to look them up real quick, but WNBA salaries are in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? I don't think there are any $1 million salaries, right? Even for the super duper stars, multiple time MVP type players. Caitlin Clark, she was the number one pick in the draft last year, makes less than $100,000 a year. And what has happened because of that, we saw with Brittany Griner going to Russia. The reason why she was detained in Russia and playing in Russia is because she had to do that to make enough money to sustain her life. And not that these guys are poor by any stretch of the imagination, but to be an elite athlete requires investing in your body. I mean, think the rumor is LeBron James spends $1 million a year just on maintaining his body for massage therapists and cold plunge in his house or whatever the hell he probably has. So they actually do, to be elite athletes, have to, I think, make a little bit more money to sustain. So anyway, all of that is to say we are headed towards, I think, this fall after this season, if not a work stoppage, a major negotiation between labor and the Players Association and the league about how much money the players get to make as part of this increasingly large pie. I think it needs to be a lot more. It will make the sport better too, right? Just like anything, if you pay people more people are going to want to do it, and suddenly you're going to have a better product on the court. And I hope that can be done while keeping smart business to grow the league as a whole. Grow the entire pie will also give more of the pie to the player.
The economic. Yeah.
I was going to say one of the challenges of the economics of the league, which Robbie, maybe what you were going to say, is that I think the majority of the teams are NBA affiliated teams, and they share I think maybe 50%, of their revenue,
maybe even
which makes it really, if you from an ownership perspective, in order to make real revenue out of the team and really grow the value of your team, it really needs to be paired with a real estate operation, which is to say you need to be in a position to own the stadium you play in to really get the league to where it can be function in a much more independent way vis-a-vis the negotiations, and you're starting to see more purpose-built stadiums. I don't think we have any for basketball yet. I don't think we have any WNBA stadiums yet in the U.S., but I know the very first purpose-built women's professional sports stadium in the U.S. and I think internationally is here in Kansas City.
I like to think of Barclays as a WNBA facility because they're more popular than the Nets. But Jason, one thing that's interesting about this is the economics, right? So the fact that the NBA, if you ask the NBA, the way they talk about this is that they are subsidizing the WNBA and that they're doing it mainly for the good of the game. And what they would cite for that is that they've been losing, and on their estimation, millions and millions of dollars every year. They claim that they lost $40 million in 2024, which is a very good year for the WNBA. Now, everything changes with the media rights deal that you just talked about. That's where the money comes in, which, what was that?
Sorry, there's some construction happening in my house.
So if you do the math, if they were losing, let's take them at their word. They were losing $40 million last year. The deal that you just talked about gives them $200 million every year. So basically you have to combine two assumptions. One is the new revenue, the $200 million. So let's say under the old assumptions, you've got $160 million after the $40 million loss of new additional revenue. So this new CBA or new deal with the players should distribute as much of that as possible. But now you start to get in negotiations. Well, okay, the investors, they will claim that they quote unquote have been subsidizing for years. So they want to start to make back a lot more of what they put in losses? And then two is, how do you project out future growth? Because you've had an explosive period of growth over the past few years. So if that continues, then we're talking about a lot more.
That to me is the whole ball game is, can you project future growth that will make it a profitable business or at least a break-even part of your business? And I know I cannot claim to be an expert in the economics of women's basketball teams, but I would venture to say that if it's not going to happen now, this is the time to take that business risk, right? And for the players, first of all, it's not their responsibility to take that risk. But B, they just saw that $200 million is coming into this league for their product. And so I get why they wanted to, we should have said out front, the WNBA, they have opted out of their CBA 2 years early, I think largely because of this rights deal. And they're like, well, now the money's here. You're not going to be losing money, or at least theoretically, you could even be making money. Now is the time for us to get a bigger part than 10% of the pie. And it is not charity. These guys are businessmen, right? And businesswomen, the owners of the team. But just like with any business, you have to invest in you have to invest in it to grow. Sometimes you have to spend money to make money. These guys know that better than anything. And when you have a Caitlin Clark and an Angel Reese and a Paige Beckers and you name it, you have your Magic and Bird now. You better invest in it. Now, if it fails, it fails. But that's not because women's sports
product is great.
It's because maybe you didn't market it well enough.
The product is great. I went to a bunch of Liberty playoff games. I was there in Game 5 when they won the championship. I think I joked with you guys, or maybe Jason when we were on Majority 54, that I actually I'm not a charity guy. I don't go to sports because I feel like I'm expected to. I don't like those shirts that are women's sports or sports, whatever. It's like patronizing. It's like, do you like the sport or do you not like the sport? You don't need to make it your cause because that's patronizing to the people playing the sport. They want you to be entertained by it. So I go to the games because they're effing awesome. And it's actually a way better product right now than the Brooklyn Nets that I live across the street from the arena. And those games were the best sporting events I've been to in a long time. People are into it. They pack the entire arena every night in those playoffs. And those tickets were starting to get pricey. Not New York Knicks Celtics pricey, but pricier than a lot of Brooklyn Nets tickets.
I tell you what, the NBA making the argument that you alluded to, Robbie, that, well, we're still not making money on this. To me, it doesn't hold a lot of water, because you can do the economics in such a way where most owners can make the case that they're not making a profit year over year from. I mean, that's how the business of sports ownership tends to work, is it's an investment over time. And now, look, you want to make as much revenue as you can, and I'm not saying it's not possible to turn a profit, and that there are many ways in which they do, but ultimately it is an investment that people make to hold, because the way that the valuation goes up over time. And so, yes, I do think that the NBA deserves some credit for having supported the WNBA for years when it wasn't doing what it's doing now. But then the other way to look at that is, yes, the NBA made a really smart investment during that period, and it continued to support the game until the audience caught up to how awesome the game is, and now you're there. And so then the question becomes, well, how much of a return should the NBA be due on that investment? And should that return on that investment hamstring the league from continuing to grow and be able to pay the players what they're worth? And so I think it's just kind of a fascinating, we talk on here about the politics of sports. This is the ultimate labor management dynamic. Like, how is this going to play? And I think it's going to be really interesting to watch it play out.
Yeah, it's worth saying some of the ways that the league has grown. Just a couple stats we pulled here. Highest total attendance in 22 years. Last year, up 48%. League got 154 sellouts last year. Total sales of merch were up 601% from 2023. Again, I think that's largely the Clark Reese generation. Now we have Beckers and others coming who are true stars. The Fever themselves had 340,000 plus fans come to their games last year. Sometimes they had to move it to bigger arenas because because of the Caitlin Clark.
And by the way, let's remind people, they don't play in New York.
Yeah,
they
play
some of their
Indianapolis.
some of their games here as they travel, but we're talking about an Indianapolis-based team.
Exactly. They have millions of people watching their games on not just in person, obviously, but on television now, and obviously that audience will grow with this new rights deal. So, yeah, I think the way you framed it is perfect, Jason. It's like, is the league and the owners due some return on their investment now, or is now actually the time to double down to some extent on the investment they've already made to continue to grow the league with the assets that they've created? And it's an open question. Like, I get why one owner might feel one way and another owner might feel another, right? If you're Joe Lacob, who's the owner of the Warriors and the Valkyries, like, my guess is he just wants they have an expansion team, right? So they just want to grow.
Yeah.
Whereas
too, clearly.
Yeah,
but like using his private jet. He's trying to break the rules to like fly them around in his private jet.
Yes, exactly. But you have some guys who probably, I don't know who owns the Storm or some of these franchises that have been around forever, that like probably felt like they've been sinking money and they're like, wait a second, this is my moment. So it might actually be, I'd be really curious. No one's going to talk about this in the absence of a labor deal publicly, but like to see if there's tension within the ownership, even about what kind of approach to take. I don't feel like there's a lot of misalignment in the NBA. Owners are just like, we have a cash cow and we're just trying to milk it. NFL, same deal. But you probably have WNBA owners who are, some of whom feel more like us and some of whom feel more like, wait a second, I've been losing money for a decade or 2 decades. Like, give me my money back.
Right. And if you're the NBA, you kind of can't have it both ways, right? Like, either you're going to make the argument, look, we made a long-term investment in this and we are due to be paid on our long-term investment, or you're going to make this argument that they've sort of been making for a while, which is, we did this, even though it wasn't necessarily always good business for us, we did this in order to support the women's game. Okay, if you did it out of charity, you have accomplished your mission. Like, if that's the case, great. You accomplished your mission. Great job. We appreciate it. And now you got to go let it be its own game. If you really believed in the purpose of elevating women's basketball.
Yeah, and it's just like, if you were to take the sports out of it and just say, with these financial figures at play, and this is a company, almost every rule of business is, this is when you keep pushing money back in and investing and growing the company, right? Instead of pulling it out. Like, remember how Amazon didn't make profit for 20 years before they started showing profits. So it's like Like this is the time to keep pushing. Like this is a growth sport right now.
You would think.
All right.
Think. Well, go ahead.
Go
Jason.
ahead. No, you're probably going to introduce this video here.
Yeah, I was going to say it's worth.
walkout.
We should probably show a couple of them. First, a breakdown of the CBA negotiations is a longer clip, but I think it's worth both for our education and for the listeners and watchers a little bit of detail on what the negotiations are like between the labor and management sides here.
I believe the WNBA players provided a proof of concept last season. Attention, ratings, attendance, it's all up. And the product is great. There's a new crop of identifiable young stars, new rivalries, storylines that people are following. The players are captivating. And there's an appetite for investment. You know, we're seeing new WNBA teams. We're seeing alternative leagues. When we discuss the conversation in a reasonable, right-minded way, it's important to note that WNBA players are looking to renegotiate the revenue split and that they aren't asking for NBA salaries. But they are looking to the NBA's model where in their revenue split, it's about 50-50. The players are pushing a lot of the momentum that we're seeing. They're behind a lot of that. They're driving it.
And it's also worth saying that other leagues have cropped up in that are paying higher salaries than the WNBA. Unrivaled is the big one that happens in the WNBA offseason. And most of the big stars, Breanna Stewart, not Caitlin Clark, but several of the big stars, and I think Nafisa Collier, Breanna Stewart, play in Unrivaled. And I think they can make up to six figures in like a shorter season, et cetera. So there's also a competitive pressure on the WNBA not to become obsolete. Because at some point, Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and these big stars, we talked about this in the context of European stars in the NBA, like they could pack up and go to a league where they play less and make more. And is that like, are they offering some charity to the WNBA by like, obviously it's a big brand and it has rights, but like, it's like live golf, right? It's a bottom line situation. A lot of the best players in golf just left because they're like, I'm going to make money and maybe no one will ever hear from me again, but I'll be just fine. So it's going to be both from the player side and from the ownership side, like a real watershed moment for women's sport. It could go one of two ways. I kind of feel like, and you could see a world in which they do the reinvestment, like you talked about before the clip, Ravi. You could also see a world in which the owners are like, screw this. Like, this is our chance to extract some value from this and could have a long work stoppage or, stagnated growth within the league.
I say if I were advising them, I'd say cut a short-term deal, 3 years. So then
the players,
bet on yourselves. Give yourself like a pretty good hard increase to the baseline salaries and the upper limit salaries, and bet on yourselves that the league is going to continue to grow so that you're in an even stronger negotiating position in the next few years.
For the ownership, we talked about this last week. You are in competition with NIL deals. If you want to get the biggest stars out of college after a year or two, you're going to have to pay a decent salary because they're going to make $1 million in NIL. There's no doubt about it. So
90 grand or whatever Caitlin Clark makes is insane. Like, we can all agree on that. That's obviously the legacy of an old CBA deal, but it's kind of emblematic of the issue, which is Caitlin Clark makes plenty of money in endorsement deals, et cetera, but it just feels wrong, right? Which is why I think a lot of people in this one, even the haters and the anti-woke wannabes, are going to look at it and be like, wait a second.
Well, it's just economics, right?
That can't be right?
It's also, can we take a second and talk about how like confusing politics are in this country right now? That if you are like a MAGA person, you're supposed to be against these people these women getting a higher salary because that somehow represents diversity, equity, and inclusion. But if you're a Republican, you're supposed to be for like free markets where people can negotiate for what they're worth and their value. But if you're a Democrat, you're supposed to be for the union, right? So it's like, sports is a great example of how politics, there are no natural alliances and adversaries anymore.
Yeah.
Well, here's where I would square the circle and maybe where I come out in the middle here, which is in a league that is losing money. I'm not mad at that league for not paying a ton of money to the players. Like if you're losing money, you're losing money. It's economics. Like one could argue that they should invest more to grow the sport, whatever. But in that world, which is the world that is over, We could spend time arguing about that, but I'm like a dollars and cents person. I'm like, okay, if you don't have money, you don't have money. I'm not gonna like. One could make different arguments about whether there's a chicken and egg phenomenon in growing a sport, whatever. But now that the league is clearly making money and going to be making money moving forward, now let's bring in those Republicans to be like, all right, now you've got a straight economic question of market value. And if you could put down your bias against women's sports and maybe like your feelings about being told you should love a sport, and you just forget for a second the annoying liberal next to you who's telling you need to just love women's sports because of like, you know, progressive values, and just watch the product and look at the dollars and cents, you will probably come out on the side and saying, let's pay these women what they deserve.
One of the biggest drivers of and this is some stuff I learned recently. One of the biggest drivers of fandom of a local major sports franchise is the percentage of youth in the area who play that sport, which is why you see people like, you know, you see baseball teams investing in programs to make sure that there are youth baseball programs in their town. You see, you know, it's why you see so many football players encouraged to hold, you know, football camps in their hometown. But because one of the surest ways to make fans out of families is to have them, you know, going to their kids' youth events. And, you know, and what's happened over the last several years, you've had an explosion of youth sports for girls. You have as many, it seems to me anecdotally, when we're going to like one of True's basketball games, there is as likely to be a girls team coming out from having just played on the court than there is a boys team. We've certainly seen that with soccer over the last several years. You're starting to see it with like flag football. Look at the explosion of popularity of college, women's college softball. I mean, you know, when I look at like travel, the travel sports, you know, girls softball is way up there. So my point is like, this is going to continue. Like girls basketball is becoming more and more popular for girls to play. More and more girls are playing sports. And as a result, more and more families are going to be great candidates to buy season tickets to the WNBA team in their town. So it's
more and more great players will be produced, right? It's
absolutely,
it is a virtuous cycle that it did need a spark. And whether that spark, you know, Subert, Taurasi generation or the new generation, whatever, the spark exists, as Ravi said a couple of minutes ago. So we should just acknowledge that has happened. If you're not acknowledging that, you're just a hater at this point, because you clearly didn't watch the WNBA finals last year, or you didn't watch. The games are awesome now. The product is different from the NBA. It's beneath the rim, but like it's great sports and great theater. There's, as the woman said in the clip, there's rivalries. There's people who don't like each other. There's that kind of off the court drama, which is great. So like, it's a good product. And we got to
be fair, all that stuff was probably there before. It's just that
it probably was
about by commentators.
I don't know enough, but there are commentators like Simmons who say that the game has changed, like that the product on the court has gotten better. I don't know enough about basketball, nor did I watch the WNBA enough to know before to say like something has changed or not. I do have to say though that as a New York Liberty fan, it's great to be on the side of a conspiracy for once in sports. Like that, the end of Game 5 was suspicious.
A little suspect,
It's very suspect, but I'm glad we were the beneficiaries of that. Jason, you know a little bit about that. Well, if people are listening, and you're watching on video, make sure to go to where you get your podcasts and subscribe on Spotify, Apple, wherever. And just hit that follow button, hit that subscribe button. And if you love what you hear, leave a review. If you don't, then just forget about it. Yeah, just forget that you ever had it. Maybe come back next week and we'll try again.
All right. Well, we did it. We actually, I think that's our first one that went an hour or more. So thanks to everybody for listening. You can find, I always screw up your social media handle, Addisu. So you
I'm
do
at
it.
at ASDEM on Twitter. I'm not going to call it X. And I'm thinking about coming back to X after 2 years hiatus. So I keep saying that, but I'm actually going to do it. And at Addisu on Instagram.
All right. I can do ours. Ravi is at Ravi M. Gupta on everywhere. And I'm at Jason Kander pretty much everywhere. Thanks very much for listening. Sports really do matter quite a lot.